Hi everybody, welcome to our session. My name is Ffion Jones. I'm a partner at PeopleNotTech. I'm also a team coach. I've been working with engineers for over a decade now, and having spent lots of time working on projects with project leadership teams and project teams, what I've really found is that it's in the team that we find the magic, and that's why I do what I do. Beyond that, and further to that, I've found out that psychological safety is one of the most important things in building great teams, and that's become a huge passion point for me as a team coach.
Hi, I'm Duena Blomstrom. I'm an author, a keynote speaker, but more importantly, I'm the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of PeopleNotTech. And what we do is we make the world's first solution that diagnoses and improves psychological safety in teams. And I personally fell in love with Agile and DevOps many, many years ago, making all kinds of products for fintech. So our talk today will have a number of examples which come from that world of financial services and banking. So bear with us. Hopefully they will be helpful to you today. The topic that we have, as Ffion said, is one that's very near and dear to our heart. This is what we live and breathe. We spend our days figuring out what is it that psychological safety in teams means, and what can we do to get more of it and less of the negative behavior, which we will talk to you about today, called impression management.
So we wanted to talk to you first of all about what is psychological safety. Now, before we talk about definitions, we want to make it absolutely clear that we are really aware that lots of people watching today and listening today are going to be aware of what psychological safety is. We just want to make sure that we frame it up properly. And for those of you that maybe haven't heard of the term, we can give you a bit of the context and the history. So psychological safety and the work on psychological safety originated with William Kahn in the 1990s. And then Professor Dr. Amy Edmondson has really done much of the in-depth research over the last 25 to 30 years, amongst others, but she's brought it into the popular conscious through her research and her writings. And she defines psychological safety as a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk. We've taken it to our hearts, and it's become the central passion of our work here at PeopleNotTech. So our description and definition is around a psychologically safe team being one that feels like family and moves mountains together. So if you think back to the last time you made some magic with the team, how you were open and debated and were vulnerable and learning, creating and getting stuff done, that was psychologically safe.
Exactly. And of all these definitions, the one that we feel resonates most when we talk to teams, leaders, and just people in general is these two words in it, essentially. As soon as we say you're looking at a team that feels like a family, you get some reaction. Some of this reaction is a slight eye roll at first, because people immediately go to how their family may not be one from Seventh Heaven or some other sitcom they've seen in the 80s. But with that said, we all know that we can trust family, we can have fun with them, we can return to them, we can count on them. And that is, to a degree, the type of feeling that we would like to see in teams as well. So as long as there's a feeling of bubble, a feeling of counting on each other, a feeling of being able to be free and yourself, that is, to a degree, what we're talking about. And when people do connect, that is, without a doubt, when we can bring them along on the journey of getting more of psychological safety. So speaking of the journey of psychological safety, as Ffion was saying earlier, it has been studied by academics over the years, and the vast body of research comes from Professor Dr. Amy Edmondson. And many of you listening to this would have seen her books, would have read her books. To me, they're up there with the projects. Make sure that you have bought and read everything she's written about teams and teaming and the fearless organization. And once you have done that, consider the fact that there is maybe some gap between the research that Amy was doing, because it was focused primarily on the medical field and a number of other industries, and the way that this reflected to business in a sense. And to my mind, where the shift has come in, and where this has become part of the consciousness of us all, I would say, is when Google started giving us the results of the Project Aristotle. Most of you here obviously know about it. Some of you here may have answered the questionnaire that brought about a result for a report I'm going to talk about later. But the Google Project Aristotle is what was the turning point in terms of psychological safety and the acceptance of the term, the understanding of what it means, and how important it became to the business world, because who doesn't want to be like Google? Some say they don't, but they still do. So essentially, when you look at the results of Project Aristotle, the data set is massive. The question was, what is it that we can do to get more very productive and highly performant teams? What are they made out of? And the number one finding there was it did not really matter what type of people they were putting in them beyond a certain level of keywords and skills. What really mattered was whether or not these people were having these things in common in a team, these behaviors, these understanding, these stable types of interactions. And those were obviously a number of them you see on the screen had to do with whether or not they felt they can depend on each other, whether there was structure, clarity, if they made any impact through their work, and if they had purpose. But the number one behavior that was in common to all of the performance teams was psychological safety. And if that was a big signal, as I said earlier, getting ahead of myself, the biggest signal to my mind came in 2019 when we had the State of DevOps Accelerate report come out, one of my dearest and most beloved pieces of ammunition in the arsenal of explaining to the